Big week 8 coming up in the program Fantasy Football League. It's a no bye week, as you guys know. And today I'm not going to go too deep into depth over all the matchups. I just wanted to kind of brush over things. I've already covered a couple of games that we have coming up, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the Georgia Bulldogs, a team that has outperformed expectations this year. Georgia got out to kind of a tough start here, going 1-3 out of the gates. They lost to Fresno State, California, and San Diego State and got a big win over Michigan. But that was it. And it was looking pretty bad for the Bulldogs. But then they went on to rattle off three straight victories, actually. And they're playing New Mexico this week. Now, of course, this is going to be a tough game against New Mexico. And there's a good chance they lose this game. But looking ahead at the schedule, you see that they have Oregon in week 9. Now, that is a pretty much a laydown game because Oregon's in the redshirt season. Then they have Texas, a team that they can beat, a very good team, but a team they can beat based on how Georgia's been playing. Penn State's on the schedule. Alabama, who's been struggling a little bit, and they have a 5-2 record, but they haven't really scored a lot of points this season. Compared to that 5-2 record, it doesn't really match how many points they've scored. There's been some hard luck teams like Tulane, for example. But when you look at this schedule and you recognize that this team has 4 wins coming into this week 8 matchup with New Mexico, the Georgia Bulldogs only need 3 more wins. There's one of them right there against Oregon. So they need 2 wins against these 4 teams. And it seems very realistic that this team, the Georgia Bulldogs here, run by Hunter Taylor, come into the season without a quarterback. They were left out of the quarterback shuffle, and they weren't able to grab anybody through the transfer draft or the rookie draft. They pick up Tyson Baggett, or is it Badgett? I'm not sure, for the Bears, who's covering right now because Justin Fields is out with an injury. They have a quarterback now, not a great quarterback, but they're going to get points at the position. And you look at how many points they've been scoring of late. They've been in the 40s since week 4. That's 4 weeks in a row that they've been in the 40s. This team is capable of putting points on the board, as you can see. And the reason? Well, they have a fairly deep and talented wide receiver core led by Brandon Ayuk, George Pickens. KJ Osborne has stepped up in the absence of Justin Jefferson. They also have one of the better tight ends in the league, if not the best tight end in the league, in Kyle Pitts, who hasn't really lived up to expectations per se, but he's still better than the average tight end in this league. You move on down, the defensive line is pretty strong. The linebackers, definitely a talent for this team. Quincy Williams, TJ Edwards, Dre Greenlaw, Blake Cashman. They have some names here. And everybody generally has a decent secondary. Georgia doesn't have the greatest secondary, but they still have adequate guys at the top of the list. And remember, this is a non-bye week, so they're going to be full strength. If they can pull off a big upset over New Mexico, I'll say it right here. If this team, Georgia, can pull off this upset over New Mexico, no saying if they can or can't, I don't know, I say they're going to get into the championship bracket. It's a no doubt about it, because that would be their 5th victory. Next week is Oregon. That's number 6. They only have to win one of these final 4 games, and they're in. And even with a loss to New Mexico, they have to win most likely 2 of these last 4 games. When you look at the bye situation for Georgia, Badgett is out week 13. That hurts, but, he probably won't even be playing by then, and they've been able to do well without a quarterback. They still have some big buys coming up for their wideouts. They're not out of the weeds on that position, rather. That was the running back position, actually. Algier, Edwards-Helaire. But guess what? This isn't the strength of this team. The wide receiver position is the strength, and they do have a big buy coming up for Brandon Ayuk. George Pickens is done with his buys. Osborne, by the time, week 13 comes around, Jefferson will be back, and Osborne won't be quite the player he is right now. But they do have Kyle Pitts, who will be available that week 13, but he's going to be out week 11. So they do have some buys coming up, and that is going to complicate things a little bit. But nevertheless, these teams also will have their own buy issues. Teams like Texas, Penn State, Alabama, Tulane. I think Georgia's in a good position to make a run at the championship bracket. So moving along here, Georgia playing New Mexico this week. Let's look at some of the other matchups. The big one, in my eyes, let's see here. I'm going to say we've already talked about Penn State, Maryland. Let's look at Colorado, Ohio State. That's a big one. Now, these two teams have already started their game this week. Colorado getting 13 points from Thursday Night Football. Rashad White, the running back, with a strong game. Gabe Davis, the wide receiver, with a great game. So Ohio State has a lot to overcome there. They come into this game 3-4. Colorado at 4-3. Colorado gets this win. Now they're looking at only needing 2 more wins to get into the championship bracket, most likely, unless there's like 8 teams that have a winning record, of course. But I would say that Colorado, with a win this week, would be in a pretty good position. And you see what's coming up down the stretch for them. They've got Texas, Alabama, Maryland, Fresno State, Michigan, all good teams, no Oregon in there. So they're going to have to earn it, but they'd only have to win, as I said, 2 games of those final 5 games. So they could go 2-3, a losing record, and still make the championship bracket. So looks pretty good for the Buffaloes, formerly Appalachian State, of course. Got a good quarterback there in Trevor Lawrence. There is a red flag here this week, but it looks like he's probably going to play. They often have a red flag on Trevor Lawrence. Jerome Ford could be a big loss. He was limited, but he's not out. They'll need him. Of course, they have some other guys who can run. Jameer Gibbs, the rookie running back. Rashad White, of course, a strong running back. Even guys like Damian Pierce, he's having kind of a down year, but still very strong. Who knows? Maybe Michael Carter comes out of it at some point. Already Gabe Davis with a huge game. Romeo Doubs is good at wide receiver. Rondale Moore has been a disappointment for the most part, but still capable. They have some guys here who can score for App State. Not App State, sorry. Still thinking of this team as App State, Colorado. That would be Mark Jones's team, of course, that won the championship 3 years ago. Front line, the pass rush, not bad, not very deep, but they've got a couple of decent guys. Josh Allen, I don't know, they say healthy, even though he's got a red flag. I think that's a glitch in the system. Patrick Queen, of course, good again, but the rest of the linebackers, Isaiah Simmons has been a big disappointment since he was the first overall pick a couple of years ago. Pretty decent secondary. They do have a red flag here with Andre Cisco. Hamstring. Not sure how that'll play out, but honestly, I think that they're in a good position here to beat Ohio State this week because of the big games by Gabe Davis and others. Let's have a look at Ohio State here. They need a win pretty badly here to stay out of trouble. If you look at the final stretch for Ohio State, they got San Diego State there, Penn State, Texas. Oregon's a win. New Mexico. So these are some tough games. San Diego State and New Mexico are top 4 teams right now. Penn State is a top 4 team too. So tough schedule ahead for Ohio. And they haven't really been scoring a lot of points every game. As you can see, in the 30s and 40s most of the time. They are a very capable team, though, with Jalen Hurts at the helm. I think this is going to be a barn burner this week. Ohio State versus Colorado. That's looking like a good one. Let's quickly look down the list here and see what else we have. Texas versus Michigan. I think I talked about that one before. We talked about Brock Purdy. We got Alabama Tulane. Alabama is one of those teams that's in a little bit of trouble, in my opinion. Haven't gotten a big game from these guys except for Terrell Bernard, the linebacker, on Thursday Night Football. So that's a solid game. Looking across the way, good game by the running back James Cook for Tulane. Tulane, of course, is without a quarterback, but they are a capable team. Looking at Tulane, hold on here. Even though they're 0-7 and they're out of it, they're now officially out of it. They've shown that they can score in the 40s. So this is a team that could always play spoiler, and I think Mark Jones talked about this in the chat earlier this week. He talked about Tulane being a spoiler, and I could see that. Tulane could spoil the day for a lot of teams: Maryland, San Diego State, Texas, and Georgia, all teams that are in the running for the championship bracket. But if they have a bad week, this Tulane team is a team that could take them down. Tulane, of course, going to be without a quarterback, but they still have a strong running game. They've got a little bit of a wide receiver. Not too good on the wide receivers, actually. What else do they have here? Weak pass rush. Not particularly strong on defense. But, defense is an up and down position. So I think Tulane could play spoiler. Alabama is going to have to get this win this week in order to keep their chances strong to get into the championship bracket. Other than that, Fresno State Cal, that's a good one. Fresno State, California. Let's see here. It's looking like Cal is projected to win this game pretty easily, actually. Let's have a look at what Cal's got going into this week. Desmond Ridder, yeah, he's been picking it up. He's been adequate. He's been one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Plus, they have Malik Willis, who's getting some playing time here and there. You never know what the situation's going to be with the Titans. Maybe Willis, he's shown himself to be the backup quarterback to the starter Ryan Tannehill, so he has a chance to play. Not bad on the running game. When they get Justin Jefferson back, they'll definitely be good. Cal has Jacoby Myers, who's been good at times. He had a great week last week. He's averaging almost 5 a game. Zay Flowers has been good, so the wide receiver game's strong. They've got an adequate pass rush, kind of weak in the secondary at linebacker, but then the safeties and corners are pretty strong and deep. So Cal has got a strong chance of making the championship bracket, but they are lined up with some tough opponents down the stretch. You got New Mexico on the schedule. You got Penn State, Texas, Michigan is good. They're all good. I mean, these teams are all good. Maybe Alabama, I said they're struggling a little bit. They could be a game that is going to be a winnable game for Cal. That will be a key game for Alabama in Week 9, as both these teams are going to be, looking to improve their chances at the championship bracket, and that's one of these matchups where it could be a do or die situation. Not do or die, but it could be like a really crucial game to win for both teams because they're very evenly matched. I'd say Cal might be a little more talented than Alabama. And Alabama could suffer that fate that Georgia had a couple of years ago when they had Lamar Jackson and they looked strong early and then they just faded and they didn't even make the championship bracket. So Alabama's in a tough spot. All in all, a pretty interesting week ahead for us. Again, there's no buys in week 8. So we have a lot of decent games to watch and nobody can use that excuse of the buy. So it is what it is. This is going to be like a measuring stick week, I think. I think most teams are going to find out just who they are because they're full strength at midseason, which is a rarity in the NFL. But I think with the added week 18 in the NFL, it's kind of changed the bye schedule up a little bit and add a little character to the season, perhaps. At any rate, I think that's about all I've got for week 8. I'll probably come back and review the games sometime early in the week next week. But other than that, enjoy the games, guys. I'll talk to you soon.